Welcome back to the Potentially Dangerous podcast. This is episode 65. I'm your host, Ross Bartachek. Joining me tonight is Lars Underbaki. Potentially Dangerous podcast brought to you by our friends over at MyHouse. You can go to iawrestle.com, check out the banner, or you can just go to myhousesportsgear.com, check it out yourself. If you're a high school team, if you're a club, or just, you're looking to get some new gear for coming season, check out MyHouse. They support us. We support them. Give them a click. Check it out. Lars, it has been a really long time since we've done just a regular podcast. How you been?
Oh, been doing good. Just been staying busy. I know we're hitting prime time now. It's clutch time before the night of conflict. So good to be back and talking a little wrestling.
Yeah, pretty soon, as our wives call it, we'll be going to the moon, right?
That's right.
You get into fantasy football at all?
I do. I cut it back this year. I'm only doing one league.
Oh, that's probably for the best. One league is probably all you need to do. It's too much stress otherwise.
That's right. Gotta keep them straight.
That's right. So I just bring it up because tonight we're recording this, but I'm probably going to be flipping back to my scores. I got a slim lead. Drew Brees is going against me, and I just want to win, man. God, this is so deflating. I'm ready for wrestling season. Going to be 0-3 if I don't watch out here. So Anyway, the good news is we got a crap ton to talk about. Holy cow. I just looked, and I think the last time you and I were on, which was pretty much the last, official podcast, normal podcast, I guess you'd call it, was, end of August. So we gotta catch up from, Labor Day, man. So, we won't go chronologically. We'll just kind of touch on everything that's kind of happened, kind of kick off. Josh Jeva was added to the Drexel wrestling staff. He's been a director of ops out at the University of Penn for a while. Good to see a former Hawk getting hired. Lars, do you have any thoughts on Jeva? I mean, he's a recent Hawk, so, he's still pretty fresh in a lot of fans' minds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting hire. He didn't have the career that I think Hawk fans wanted or that he wanted at Iowa, but he was obviously a talented kid, real good wrestler. So I wish him the best. Like you say, it's just good to have another guy with Iowa ties out there in the coaching ranks, and hopefully he can help that program come along.
What do you think about, maybe it's just kind of because it was this group of people to come through Iowa that we're seeing it more, but what do you think about these guys that are going out and getting these jobs as a director of ops and then going into coaching? Because this is something we've seen with Derek St. John do. Well, I guess he started coaching at North Dakota State, but when he went to Virginia Tech, he got into that director of ops role, and now he's on the staff. Same thing Jeva did, director of ops into the staff. What do you think about guys going out and getting their hands dirty in that role first?
Yeah, whatever it takes. It's a great way to get in. It's a great way to show the coaches that you're willing to put in the work and that you believe in the program. And, like I say, just get the foot in the door, get to know the university, stuff like that. And then, if you've done what you needed to do when the job comes open, then you're in that position. You got a leg up at the job. So I think it's a great way for these guys to get out there and get known and let people know that they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. So I think that's kind of the only coaching news we had, but there was some commitment news we got to catch up on too. We can kind of start with Grandview, kind of adding some people here. It was announced this week on Twitter, just on Monday night actually, that they'd added state medalist Cade Kelso. They also added Adam Brown, I think a week ago, Southeast Polk wrestler, another multiple-time state medalist there in the state of Iowa. Lars, can you give people, a background around if they don't know who Adam Brown and Cade Kelso are? Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, a little bit. Brown's been a name that's, he's been kind of in that high-level group for a long time. He's yet to win that elusive state title, I believe, but he's, a couple-time place winner, real good kid. So I think he'll do well. I think that's kind of a maybe an under the radar a little bit kind of move that, maybe he wasn't on a ton of D1 lists or anything like that, but he's still a really solid kid who can make an impact, especially at, a little bit lower level. I think he's kind of a sleeper for them. And then Kelso, he's definitely not a real well-known guy. It's not a big-time program at Central Decatur or anything like that. But like I say, he was a place winner, and he's had a pretty solid career up there. Was a place winner last year. So I think he's got a chance to be good. Maybe when he gets into that room, he's a guy that has a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and could really take off.
Yeah, and like you said, Brown's a pretty memorable name, pretty centrally located there by Southeast Polk. I think they kind of benefit from, a lot of the guys go work out at the Viking Wrestling Club there. Do you know how many wrestlers from Polk are, how many guys roughly went to Grandview that are from Southeast Polk? I'll try to pull it up right now. Does anybody stand out to you? I'm trying to, like Bryce Fisher, I was thinking just
Bryce Fisher is there now. He went to Iowa Central and then to Grandview.
Yeah. Man.
I can't really think of a ton of them.
Yeah, and if I'm missing them, Jessam's going to light us up on Twitter.
That's right.
Anyway, so they're adding some solid guys, definitely benefiting from being right next to, what helps keep Grandview strong. Definitely we'd have to think of being right next to a high school that's in the national rankings year after year. I think Zach Barnes, the guy we had on the podcast with Tony Hager a couple of weeks ago, they talked about schools he's looking at, and I think what I've heard is that Barnes is going to be visiting Grandview this week, at the end of the month, end of September. So, they're definitely trying to get their foot in that door and build that pipeline from Southeast Polk. And I'd have to imagine, just looking at all the success all those guys have had, it's not a bad idea for Nick Mitchell to get his foot in the door there.
No, absolutely. It's definitely a school that they're going to attack, and schools like Johnston, Waukee, and some of those in the area, have really been good. Valley, so they've really got a lot of room to be really good around there. Just recruiting the Des Moines area will really, give them an edge. So not just Southeast Polk, but there's been just a ton of good wrestling in that area lately.
Absolutely. Sticking with the recruiting news, sticking with 3A news, this happened more toward the beginning of the month of September, but we haven't talked about Wyatt Wright from North Scott. He's committed to Nebraska. This was on iawrestle.com, also our new site, nebraskawrestling.com, NEWrestle. Lars, what did you think about Manning coming into this state and plucking one of our top 10 seniors?
He's right there on that list. I think we had him, number 11 overall in the top 50. But that includes, some sophomores ahead of him, or juniors now ahead of him. But yeah, he's just been a huge riser the last 2 years. He didn't even qualify his freshman year of high school. He goes and gets third place as a sophomore, and then last year comes in and shocks Ethan Anderson. Looked great on his way to a state title. So I know there was a lot of D1 schools that really moved him up on their list. I think the rankings just came out, was it today, that had him, I believe, was it 8th at 220 in the nation. Been a real, fast riser. So for Manning to get that, I think that's a really good gift for him. I know, some of the state schools and South Dakota State and a bunch of schools like that were really high on his list as well. So definitely a good get. Nebraska's obviously been recruiting well, put together another good class already this year. So I'm excited to see, Wyatt bulk up a little bit and see what he can do at heavyweight.
I think it's crazy. I don't know. We're just not used to seeing a lot of our good guys go out of state. And I know this is something we've talked about before, but it looks like a lot of our in-state guys are looking elsewhere out of state. And, I think we've seen Nebraska pop up at one point or another. They've been on both Bryce and Drew West's list at one point. Keaton Geertz has mentioned them. Braden Curry, another top 10 senior kind of. Just a lot of kids, it seems like, are kind of noticing what's going on in Nebraska, and it's just it's a different feeling. I mean, I'm used to, by now, kind of getting a feel. A lot of UNI, Iowa State, Iowa always seems to be on the list, but now it just seems like one, maybe two state schools and some more out-of-state schools. But definitely go ahead.
Oh, I think a lot of schools are really trying to dip into that talent pool in Iowa. It seems like we've started hearing more, obviously, North Carolina with Ramos. Purdue's got Ursuline. He's been trying to get into the state. South Dakota State, North Dakota State. Campbell's been on a lot of lists. Gardner Webb has been actually a name that I've been hearing a lot for some of these top kids in Iowa, being recruited and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think, the state borders have always kind of been locked down between, the three D1 schools. You got Grandview, you got Wartburg. Usually there wasn't a lot of kids getting out, but, in talking to some of these juniors and seniors, there's definitely a lot of kids looking at out-of-state schools as well.
Absolutely. It's just new feeling here. I guess we haven't really been covering this too long, but seems like it's bucking a trend. I don't know. Of course, want to mention Wyatt stand out on the football field. He was All-State last year for North Scott, and he's joining a guy that was a future Hawkeye commit, Jason Renteria. He decommitted. That's kind of pretty big news over the summer. Now he's going to Nebraska, so kind of a little bit of another Iowa tie right there. But I'm interested to see how Wright does out there. Colin Jensen's kind of been so-so. They just lost one of their bigger stars in the making. It looked like Derek White was a really promising sophomore for Nebraska, and he's transferred, or I guess he left the program. We don't know where he's transferring, so kind of be interested to see. They haven't really had a breakout star, and maybe Wyatt can be that guy for them.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. Like I say, I think he's got a high ceiling. I think he's been improving a lot over the last few years. So, he keeps on that trajectory. I know he's really excited to get out there. So, I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, and hopefully he does big things. Sticking
with college recruiting news, we kind of been talking to the senior class the most right now. I know these juniors are getting contacted by coaches too, but they're kind of non-committal, saying who they're talking to. They kind of want to leave their options open, which is 100% understandable. But we do know Aaron Costello, Western Dubuque Prep, he's narrowed down his college choices to Iowa, South Dakota State, Gardner Webb. Lars, I know you've talked to him a little bit. What are you hearing out of Aaron?
Yeah, so he visited South Dakota State, I want to say just over a week ago. I don't think it was last weekend, but the weekend before. He was out there with Dylan Shuck and some kids. So I know he had a good visit out there, and he's got another visit coming up with Gardner Webb. I kind of want to say this weekend, but I'm not positive on that. And he's been to Iowa already. He was down for, I believe, the Iowa State game. So he's kind of just making those rounds, clearing things up. I really do expect him to probably commit here within the next week or two. After he makes his visit to Gardner Webb, I think he'll be hearing some news from the Costello camp here pretty quick.
I think I've been hearing a little bit of the same thing from him. I do know the Gardner Webb is actually the first weekend in October.
Okay, so one more.
And from what I know, that Iowa State visit was a unofficial visit, wasn't an official. So he still does have that option to come to Iowa on an official visit. We put out that post. Iowa's in his top 3. And, of course, I think he could take up to 5. So, really, he could add a couple more schools. But getting that indication, he's kind of got a good feel for what he's thinking. So, yeah, stay tuned to IA Wrestle. We'll have some news here. Hopefully, some of these kids will be committing before the signing day, because I have a feeling that could be a pretty busy day. A lot of people looking forward to seeing what Brady Berge up in Minnesota and Jacob Warner in Illinois. I was high on both of those recruits lists, so I know a lot of people are geared up for that day, and I'm sure we'll be busy, Lars.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be plenty going on, and truthfully, I kind of I think there's going to be a junior or two that might even be coming here before the season starts. So, definitely keep posted on IE Wrestle. We'll try to get you as much information as we can. We've been trying to reach out to quite a few of these kids. I've been hearing from some college coaches as well about, kids that they're contacting and going after. So I think there's just going to be more news coming here in the next few weeks.
Absolutely. And, while we're talking about it, I'll throw it out there. We do know that Keaton Geertz or Gertz? I never know which one.
Gertz.
Keaton Gertz was out at Nebraska, I want to say 2 weekends ago now. I think it was middle of September.
Sounds right.
So, visits are definitely in full swing. And, we'll keep you tuned in. So you tune into us, and we'll give you the knowledge. Lars dropping hints, too, on that junior nugget. So moving on to another topic we probably don't need to spend too much time on just because, I don't know how big of a deal it is for some people, but Iowa State, and UNI all ranked in the top 10 for Division I school attendance. This was the 10th straight year in a row that the University of Iowa has led the nation in attendance, which came as a little surprise with their record-setting duel. Lars, do you have any thoughts on this attendance? Just kind of what it means for the state of Iowa having 3 teams in the top 10?
Yeah, I think it's great that they're all there. I know that UNI has really been making a push. They might not have the biggest arena, but man, they fill West Gym and that place gets rocking. It's always a good time. There's always been an argument for big duels. Should they move it to the McLeod Center or not? But I know they love that atmosphere, and to have that kind of arena and still be able to be in the top 10, I think is awesome. If anybody hasn't been up there, get up there, go to a dual meet. You won't be disappointed. So awesome job there. Iowa State's really picked up momentum with all their recruiting, different things going on. So I think that their attendance is just going to keep rising as well. And then, I expect Iowa to have another monster year this year. They're obviously not going to get the boost from the outdoor duel, but they have just an amazing home schedule this year. So I think they're going to sell a lot of tickets and be number one again, probably again next year. So.
Yep. The biggest question will be whether Penn State can finally catch them, but obviously they're going to be hurt having to travel to Iowa rather than having Iowa come to them. That's like a 16,000 person draw for Penn State out there, but it'll probably be whatever Carver's capacity is, 15, whatever they say it is. Could be a pretty packed house. So, and like you said, packed schedule. Ohio State's coming in. Just a better dual schedule this year. Iowa definitely had a lot going on. You mentioned Northern Iowa. They finished 10th on this list last year. And like you said, you want to get some of that energy. Go to the West Gym. They open. I don't know if they opened the season, but right out of the gate they got Virginia Tech. Rankings came out for 125 pounds today, Monday, as we're recording, and they had Thomas Gilman number 1, Dylan Peters number 2, and Joey Dance number 3. So, November 18th, you can head to Cedar Falls and see the number 2 versus number 3 matchup in the nation at 125 pounds. Usually those two provide them fireworks. Virginia Tech's got a solid lineup. UNI is putting a lot of that number 4 recruiting class that's going to be entering the lineup this year. So great duel to see. UNI's got a good schedule. They got Max coming this year too, Max Conference Championship. So definitely check that out, and hopefully we see them going up. And Iowa State was 6th on the list. I don't know if we said that, but definitely some good things out of there. And while we're sticking with this college news, I just kind of want to stick to that theme here, Lars. Another thing we were able to put out a couple weeks ago is that former Nazareth, Pennsylvania wrestler Aaron Bradley no longer planning to join the Iowa wrestling program. He was the top 40 recruit coming out of high school, took a 2-year mission, got back from his mission in Brazil, said, yep, dedicated, I'm coming back to Iowa. But as we know, sometimes can happen, life just gets in the way, and it wasn't anything bad necessarily. He got married. He did move to Iowa City. But I guess, that's not where his heart's at. So, I mean, Lars, what does this mean to the Iowa programs and to lose Bradley?
Yeah, this is actually, bigger news than some might think. Certain fans might not be as familiar with Bradley or forgotten about him. It's been a few years since his recruitment. But the big deal is the fact that Sam Stoll is still injured, and he is the only heavyweight now listed on the Iowa roster. So if Stoll can't start the year, which I don't believe he'll be ready at the very beginning of the year, either Iowa's going to have to forfeit at heavyweight. Stephen Holloway is the only true 197-pounder, I believe. So, your option is maybe slide Holloway to heavyweight, maybe slide Wilkie to 97. I really don't know what's going to happen. Iowa City duels, they probably don't need a heavyweight to win. Maybe they forfeit there, but they're extremely thin at those top weights. I know that they're trying to address it with this senior and junior class in recruiting, so hopefully they'll get some more depth in there. But for the beginning of this year, it's going to be a little touch and go, and hopefully, Sam Stoll can get healthy and the Hawks can stay healthy, especially in those upper weights where they're extremely thin.
Yeah, just heavyweights really seen, I don't know if I want to call it attrition or what, but it's just, what was it, Terrence,
Gene Jocks?
Gene Jocks, there we go. I was just going to say TJJ is what he was more commonly referred to. That's a mouthful to say. So, I know he transferred out after coming in from Rutgers. Who was the Solon heavyweight that came in that ended up?
Lance Evans. Now at
Lance
Woodford.
Evans. Yep. So they just really the last time they had some good depth was when they had Bobby Telford and Blake Raising on the same team when they were, when one guy wasn't on a red shirt.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy that we just don't have two heavyweights around unless you want to count Burhow. They got guys in the room, they just don't have eligible guys.
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting the Hawks to probably sign a heavyweight maybe in the senior class and the junior class at this point to try to build a little depth there.
What about Gable Stevenson? He's got a name built for the Hawks, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's that's not going to happen. For any fans hoping to make that one happen, he's not, or they're not on his list, and I don't think the Hawks have really even reached out to him. I think it's just a mutual. He's not coming to Iowa, so. The name sounds great, but I'd be pretty surprised at this point if he doesn't end up in Minnesota. But you never know. But I don't think it'll be Iowa.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch. I would agree. So we'll see how this heavyweight depth works out. Obviously, media day is going to be coming up, and I have to imagine one of the first questions Tom Brand's going to have to answer is, so how healthy is Stoll, and what's the plan for the beginning of the season? And actually, I want to say, I don't even know if all of the starters are necessarily going out to the Grandview Open. I want to say I heard something about, that's the first thing listed on the Iowa schedule if you go to the website. And I don't even know if they're sending the full squad there, if they're just sending the young guys. So we'll have to see how this pans out, because people are probably hoping to get some answers there early November. That might not happen right from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe a few guys that have been banged up or, kind of been recovering, rehabbing stuff. I don't think we'll see a full lineup, but hopefully we'll see a few varsity guys, and then I'm sure pretty much all the freshmen and, some of the younger guys and backups will be at Grandview anyway. Always a fun tournament, so we'll see a good squad from Iowa and Iowa State, and hopefully you and I will send a few more guys this year as well. So
yeah. My last topic on college wrestling, Lars, is this Flow Wrestling coming out with their 125-pound rankings. I've already kind of hit on where the two Iowa guys are at. And did you have a chance to look over these rankings and have any initial thoughts?
I did briefly look at them. I didn't get a chance to dig in real deep today, but it was kind of interesting to see. I think Zeke Moisey was like number 12, if I remember right. That one stood out to me a little bit. Obviously, he got hurt last year, but I think a lot of fans here in Iowa will remember him knocking off Gilman at the semis and nationals 2 years ago. So he'll be a dangerous name if he can make it back healthy. Tim Lambert was the guy for Nebraska in there. You know, I know there's been some discussion on who's going to be the guy for Nebraska. I tend to agree that Lambert will probably end up being the guy. But it's kind of interesting to see him ranked pretty high. And then obviously, you know, 1 and 2 for Gilman and Peters was really fun to see.
And I think you'd have to agree that on paper, this weight class right now looks like Thomas Gilman's weight to lose, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sure seems that way. You know, with Ohio State doing all their lineup shuffles, you sure have to think that way. But, you know, Joey Dance does own a win over Thomas Gilman. He's had his struggles at the end of the year. You know, he's been a regular season just warrior, but kind of fallen apart at the national tournament a little bit. And then, you know, Peters really has battled health throughout his career. If he can get healthy, he's going to be a threat to make the finals. But, you know, Gilman's a clear-cut, obvious number one. You know, there should be no rankings that have him anywhere but number one coming into the year. So hopefully he can make a run. You know, he hasn't two-time All-American, but he hasn't reached the top of the podium yet. He's a senior, so hopefully he can get it done this year.
And I know, you know, this is something probably we should stick away from saying, but looking over the Iowa schedule, obviously, I don't know if the entire Midland field's been announced, and if it has, I just haven't taken the time to completely dig into it. But there's certainly nobody in the Big Ten that can probably really go with Gilman. I mean, Lambert, Ethan Lezak, Minnesota, Elijah Oliver of Indiana are the only 3 Big Ten wrestlers ranked. You got to figure Nick Sirianno of Penn State probably finds his way into the rankings. Great talented kid out of New Jersey. But, I mean, just looking over, I don't know if, Gilman's got to be, he's got to have some pretty great odds to be the Big Ten champ for sure. So as long as he, you know, wrestles pretty straight up throughout the year, he's got pretty much a virtual lock to be the number 2 seed as long as he doesn't make, you know, just a crazy mistake.
Yeah, like I say, he's not going to be crazy tested. I think Sirianno is going to quickly move his way into the rankings. He's going to get up there high. You know, he might end up being the biggest challenge to Gilman in the Big Tens. You know, I think Elijah Oliver's got a ton of upside. We saw what he could do a little bit at the end of the year as a freshman last year. I think he'll make a little bit of a jump. You know, we already hit a little bit on Lambert, but, you know, Gilman's head and shoulders above those guys at this point in time. You know, they've got a lot of catching up to do. So I agree. I think Gilman's would really have to mess up to not be a 1 or 2 seed at nationals at this point.
Now, granted, Gilman didn't have to wrestle Ohio State or Penn State during the dual season last year, but he averaged over a Tech Fall like 5 team points for every duel he wrestled in last year, and he was like the 9th leading scorer at the NCAA. So I don't know what it is. I really don't think people look at Gilman as a bonus point scorer that he really is. Like, you know, I think people just get lost in how dominant guys like Zane Rutherford and Jason Nolf are for Penn State, and Isaiah Martinez even. They look at that and they see somebody that's like truly puts on, you know, a lot of points on the board. But Gilman's right there. He was boosted by quite a few pins. Him and Sam Stoll kind of had a nice little fun race last year for team lead. But, yeah, definitely looking forward to Gilman's season. Looking forward to seeing a healthy Dylan Peters. He's got Missouri's Barlow McGee's ranked number 7. That's going to be probably his biggest challenge in conference. And like we said earlier, he's going to have Joey Dance to lead off the season there pretty early. So,
yeah, as long as Peters is healthy, he's going to have a monster year. You know, a couple-time All-American already. Just need to get him 100%, and he'll be ready to roll as well. It would sure be fun to have 2 Iowa guys in the finals, wouldn't it?
Yeah, haven't seen that since Matt McDonough and Andrew Long.
It's been a while.
Not that long, but yeah, I got you. So that's what I had for college news, and now we can kind of move into something I know we really enjoy talking about, and that's our night of conflict matchups. Since the last time we've done a podcast, I know we had Zach Barnes on the podcast, but we haven't really discussed any of those matches since at least our announcement that Alana Vederick's taken on the cadet world champion and the 2016 cadet world runner-up, Rona Heaton. So, I mean, Lars, what do you think about our women's match last year? I know it's kind of hard to top having Rachel the Dachel Waters in the lineup, but what do you think about this Vederick-Heaton matchup?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one. Rachel Waters, like I say, got a lot of the pub in Iowa, but anybody who's really followed women's wrestling in Iowa definitely knows who Elena is. She's, I think a 3-time runner-up at Folkestone Nationals. She was All-American this year at Freestyle Nationals out in Fargo. She's been in the Conflict at Carver before. She's definitely competes a lot. She loves to compete. I think she's excited about this match, having a world runner-up. So, it'd be a lot of fun to see somebody of Heaton's caliber in there as well. So I think it's going to be a fun match, and I'm really excited to watch Elena get after it.
Oh, man. I love having a women's match in there in this lineup, this event. Last year was a really big surprise seeing Waters, lose that match. I put in the articles like Carver Magic, seeing that just kind of really shocked us. I was kind of speechless. I remember watching the match. But the funniest thing about this match, though, was when we were talking to Hager in our group text, and Tony asked, "Do you think I can put Rona Heaton as a number 1?" And she's only a world champion and a 2-time national champ. So I think we're pretty safe in saying she's probably a number 1 somehow, some way. So
yeah,
definitely love bringing in number 1 ranked wrestler. She's our second number 1, joining Jason Renteria. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun matchup, and I'm excited to see what Vederick can do out there.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Renteria, I don't know if we've actually really hit on the podcast about that lineup shuffle, have we?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not sure when that news came out, though.
It was early September, I think, just like a little over a week ago. I think it was right around the same time as Vederick.
Okay.
So, yeah, we originally had Keaton Gertz from New Hampton set to wrestle Jason Renteria. Gertz actually, he's grown quite a bit anyway, but he actually ended up going out for football this year, and he's actually done really, really well in the gridiron for a first-year player out there. So he's withdrawn because it's on a Friday night football, but we actually filled it in with a teammate of his now. So Michael Millage, formerly of Crestwood, now at New Hampton. He was seconds away from being a 2-time state champ. He was a champ as a freshman, got second last year to Portillo. As a sophomore, went out. He was a runner-up at Flow Nationals this offseason. Really, he's been everywhere. This kid travels all over the country, has had a really, really good career, and now he gets to step it up a notch and take on the number 1 ranked wrestler in the country, former Hawkeye commit Jason Renteria. So I know I'm really excited about this match, really excited to see where Millage is at against a kid like that, and I think it'll be a fun one.
Yeah, we love Mike. Like you said, now at a New Hampton, but he trains out at Elite Takedown Club. And man, if you listen to Jamie Gray, he's always talking about Mike don't back down from nobody, and oh God, those Elite Takedown guys are fired up for this match. So I am too. I'm a big Millage fan. He's a competitor. He puts it all out there. Went toe-to-toe with Portillo there in the state finals, and, he's pretty close to being on his way to be a 4-time state champ, but just kind of fell apart in that match. And I think you heard on the podcast we put up last week that's something that, I don't know if it eats at him, but it definitely motivates him still. He still thinks about it, and he just knows he doesn't want to feel that feeling anymore. So he's hungry. He's training for this match, and they're going to come in and have a game plan. And, if Renteria's just kind of wrestling straight up and not really moving around, creating his angles, and kind of wrestling tentative, thinking he's just going to go out there and get an easy win because Millage isn't ranked, he's going to be in for a surprise.
Yeah, and I can assure you that Gray's right, that he wasn't going to back down from a challenge. We were trying to find him other matches in this event. When the opportunity presented itself, Renteria is bigger, Middle just kind of going up a little bit in weight, but there was no hesitation. To come into an environment like this, wrestle the number one kid in the country, giving up weight, and it didn't bother him at all. Miller just chopping at the bit, and he took it right away. There was really no hesitation for him to go ahead and accept that match. So, I think it's just a good gauge, and we'll see where he's at. I know he's getting some love right now from some D1 programs, so he wants to get that signature win and really put himself on that national map as well.
Definitely looking forward to that matchup. And for some reason, we just love that New Hampton program because if, like you said, we were looking for a match for Millage. We obviously wanted Gertz in there, but we went out and so this is technically like our third announcement with a New Hampton wrestler. But Lars, you were pretty big in getting these guys to commit to the event, so why don't you preview this next match here?
Yeah, so this will be kind of a fun one. This really wasn't one that we initially had in mind. They were both kids that we had talked about, kicked around, that had nothing really presented itself as a good opportunity to get them both in there. But if anybody's been watching some of the Twitter accounts lately, there's been some talk going back and forth between Carter Cox and some of the New Hampton crew. Not necessarily Noah Phi himself. He's not as much of a social media guy, but Noah Phi has been a really more nationally ranked, well-known name. He's a Fargo All-American as an 8th grader. He placed at Super 32 last year. He was a runner-up at preseason nationals. Done some really, really nice things on the national scene, but he's just hasn't been able to get that state title. He got third as a freshman, was a big-time favorite coming in last year, and reached the semifinals at state and got knocked off by Carter Cox from Atlantic. Cox is one of those guys. He's been around, but he's never been like that top guy. He's a 2-time qualifier before last year, and then made that huge run into the state finals. Like I say, knocked off Phi in the semifinals, and I know that match still haunts Phi. I know a lot of New Hampton fans were really anxious to try to get a rematch in that one. So, we love it. It was drama. It was a lot of people talking. All these people really, really wanted this match. So we went out and got it. I think this is going to be a fun one. I think both fan bases are going to be excited about this match. And, it's tough. They've split matches in the past. They're 1-1 against each other. So this is kind of the rubber match. And, truthfully, this could have an effect on preseason rankings as well. So I'm really excited about this one. Maybe not as nationally known, but I think this is going to be a really good match. It's going to be heated, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm pretty excited for it too. Like you said, Cox just really hasn't been out there on the national scene, and maybe this is kind of a boo-boo on my part for not really, being aware of him. But he definitely opened my eyes at that state semifinals match when he did beat Phi, and I kind of remember at the time thinking, like, okay, just going down the list, I'm like, okay, Phi versus Portillo in the finals. I was just kind of already mentally marking it down, and I guess I should have done my homework a little bit better. But now we got this great matchup. I'm looking forward to it. I kind of didn't watch this match as much as I should have at the state tournament, just because I thought it was just going to be a done deal, just because I knew Phi's national credentials, and now we're going to put this match in Carver Hawkeye, and we got two guys that are pumped up for the match, and I think it's going to be a great one.
Yeah, and I mean, Cox he was a runner-up at Brute Nationals. He was a runner-up at Corn Cob Nationals. So he's had some national success, but, he hasn't went to your Fargos and your Super 32s in place the way Phi has. So just not as well known, but obviously he's a contender right there. And, as far as just true matchup, a head-to-head matchup, I think this is about as good as anything.
Absolutely. Yep. Didn't mean to talk down Cox.
No, I didn't mean that either.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a good one. We haven't, like I said, we haven't discussed Zach Barnes, who's got JJ Figueroa out of Bakersfield, California. Barnes is, I think he said to Tony that he's already kind of thinking he might end up at 145. So, I mean, he's definitely not giving up any weight. Figueroa is coming up from 32 a year ago. He might be at 38 for the season. So, I mean, Barnes might have a little bit of size that might make up for obviously Barnes isn't ranked, so he's probably giving up a little bit in the talent department maybe, but we've seen Barnes kind of blow up this year, hit the stand at 145 out of Fargo after missing weight by 2/10. What are you looking forward to in this matchup?
Yeah, I think this is a really intriguing one. Barnes has been a little under the radar in Iowa. He's always been good, but he's never won a state title. He got knocked off by Nelson Brands last year at the state tournament, ended up placing third. So he's been right in that mix, but he's just never had that huge breakout. But then he goes out to Fargo. I know it's been talked about numerous times in this podcast and elsewhere. Misses weight, really close, just barely misses weight, but bumps up and becomes an All-American up at 145. So I think that was just a huge, feather in the cap for him. I know his recruiting's been picking up. I know, he's been growing. He's really excited about it. So I think, it's a really good chance for Barnes to make a name for himself, to show what he's got. Figueroa is going to be an extremely tough opponent coming in all the way from California. I know we're really excited to get some of these kids from both coasts coming in as well. So, I think that's going to be a really fun match, and this is a huge, huge opportunity for Barnes. He's definitely going to be the underdog here, but he's been wrestling really well this summer, and hopefully he can continue that trend.
Yeah, and this is a match I'm kind of thinking is going to be on the same level with Renteria and Village. If the ranked guy comes in and he's kind of sleeping on his opponent and just thinking he's just going to come in and take care of business, you might get surprised. Barnes won 7 matches in a row out at Fargo, giving up weight. So I'm looking forward to seeing him go out and scrap, giving him a national level match where he can maybe up his stock a little bit. Definitely one of our great matchups coming in. We can kind of move on to what the more recent matchups we got. The one we announced today, of course, like I said, we're recording on Monday. And we can go ahead and talk about the next match that hasn't been released on IA Wrestle. I don't know if this podcast will come up before or after, but what we announced already, Dylan DeMillo versus Drew Bennett. Drew Bennett taking on a world team member. Lars, what do we need to know about this matchup?
Yeah, I think this is a fun one. We've had DeMillo kind of in our back pocket. We thought we had a different match for him, really highly rated one that ended up not working out. Things happen. Like I said, it's always a tough thing dealing with high school kids, but Bennett's a kid that I think all three of us had in our back pocket thinking, man, if we can find a way to get this guy a match, it'd be great. The opportunity presented itself with the other match not working out, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun having Drew Bennett come in. It seems like a recurring theme tonight that we're talking about all these kids that are maybe a little under the radar. But Bennett was just right in the mix all year last year. He was really close with guys like Biscaglia and Devos and those guys that are, really nationally known. He's on that tough Ford Dodge team. He's had great finishes at Folksdale Nationals, JJ Intermat Classic. He had a really good tournament at Conflict at Carver last year. He got third at the state tournament last year. So Bennett's a good kid. He's, been wrestling in national tournaments all his life. He's been around, so I think he's gonna come in and ready to scrap. And then, like I said, D'Amelio is very, very highly ranked. I think he's currently number 4 in the country. He was a runner-up at the trials last year. Like I said, made the cadet world team. So D'Amelio's, he's going to come in ready to wrestle. Bennett's going to have to bring his A game, but I think Bennett's coming in to scrap. He's an underdog, but he's definitely one of those guys that's not going to back down from anybody. He's ready for a big challenge as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Bennett's the reason he wasn't a state qualifier, state medalist, whatever you want to say, as a freshman is because he was behind Brody Teske, who was, oh, by the way, Fargo runner-up this past year, so he's got a pretty good training partner out there at Fort Dodge. I don't think it's too much argument to say he was probably the second best 3A wrestler at 106 pounds. Just kind of unfortunate to run into Kyle Biscaglia there of Waukee in the quarterfinals of the tournament. Battle back for third, just, like you would expect from a guy that's probably at the top of the weight class. That's still not saying, that's not a down, it's not, mark against him that he was the second best, because we know Kyle Biscaglia is actually a nationally ranked guy himself. So Bennett was in the national rankings to begin the summer. I know Flo had him in there, I think at number 17, I want to say. Kind of dropped out. Didn't really have a great Fargo, but not a bad one either, So definitely a solid kid out of Fort Dodge coming in, taking on a world team member. He's going to have to, pack his lunch pail if he's going to want to come out with a win, but he's not backing down from the challenge, and that's something I really like to see from our Iowa natives. They don't care if they're wrestling the number one kid in the nation, if the kid's wrestled overseas, on our world team. They're like, hey, whatever, throw them at me and let's scrap. So definitely looking forward to that matchup.
Yeah, I love the attitude. These kids are not only willing to take these matches, but a lot of them are just excited to get that opportunity to try to come in and do what they can to knock off these, nationally known wrestlers, like, say, world team members. So, it's that same attitude you see with Millage and Barnes and Bennett and all these guys. So it's really exciting, and hopefully they can come in and turn a lot of heads around the country.
Absolutely. And we'll head into our final matchup here. Trying to think. Let me think through our matchups here. I believe this is our third top 10 matchup we got here. We got another Oak Park River Forest guy coming in. They're hungry for some matchups. We got the number 5 ranked Anthony Madrigal coming in, number 5, taking on number 7, Kyron Hagan down in Eureka, Missouri. Top 10 matchup. I believe Hagan's a senior, Madrigal's a junior, so we got some guys looking to up their stock here. Lars, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I'm excited. I know you did a lot of work to make this one happen. Again, Madrigal, we had another match that we thought we had set up. It didn't happen. But to be able to get Hagan, you put in the work and got him, pretty recently. So I think it's a huge matchup. Like I say, top 7 wrestlers, both of them. Both have really, really good national credentials. I know Hagan was, I think, 4th in freestyle and 2nd in Greco, was a preseason nationals runner-up out of Missouri. And then Madrigal's been well documented as well. I think he plays top 3 at preseason nationals, Walsh Ironman. I think he's a multiple-time Fargo All-American, reaching the finals. So, these guys have been on that national scene for a long time. And, to get another match between top 7 wrestlers, top 10 wrestlers is just phenomenal. And what a great way to wrap up all these announcements with another top 10 matchup.
Yeah, this is great. This is match number 13 for the Night of Conflict. Definitely glad to end on a strong note with 2 top 10 guys coming in. Both families really excited for the opportunity to match up. I think, now that we're done with these matchups, this is the last one. We're probably going to lock our lineup in here unless something crazy happens that I don't know what that would be, but I guess I shouldn't say it's going to be set in stone, but I think it's going to be a really hard time to figure out this match order on how to go down this list, Lars.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I don't think we can go wrong. I think we got 13 really, really great matchups. But yeah, it's going to be fun kind of trying to figure it out. There's different things we want to do, ways to spread things out. You obviously have to have some premier matches at the end. But yeah, I don't think we can go wrong. I think we got a lot of hammers coming in here, a lot of really great Iowa kids, great national kids. So it'll be great. Hopefully we can get a lot of fans in the seats. I think it's going to be a lot better atmosphere this year, and another great lineup. And I just can't wait. We got 2.5 weeks left, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and like you said, we can't go wrong setting this lineup probably, and And that's the kind of event I think we should be bringing to the fans. I think that's kind of what they've come to expect, even though it's only our second year. But we're striving to bring you guys 13 matches that, there shouldn't be a match where you say, this is when I'm going to go get my popcorn. So, we're trying to bring the heat, as they say. I think we did a pretty good job of that. Be on the lookout. I mean, we'll have more news coming on this with the match order, like I said. We're still going to announce the coaches who we're going to have, some other details. This is our also obligatory plug to head to IA Wrestle. Click on one of the links. There's quite a few to find. Buy some tickets. You can go to the Night of Conflict tab. There's a drop down to make it really easy for you. We got VIP tickets, which are on the floor. Bleacher seats are on the floor. They're all first come, first served basis. So you're going to want to show up. Doors open at 6:30. Get there early. Get your ticket scanned. Find your seat, and have a really good view of these 13 matches. We also have general admission. We'll work with you if you want to bring a large group to kind of have a student section, one of those things for one of your fans, one of your wrestlers. So just hit us up. We're looking to pack Carver, that small section there, and just have a really great night. Lars, do you have any other news going on in Iowa? We talked about a lot tonight. So did we miss anything?
That's a lot. No, I don't think we had too much else. Also, I don't know if we've really hit it too much on the podcast, but a lot of people have probably seen already that we are partnering with Rudis this year as well. They are going to be our main sponsor for the Night of Conflict. And anybody who's coming to the event, bring your checkbook, bring your cash, because they have just some absolutely great gear. I can't wait for everybody to see this. People on Twitter have seen some of it already. The wrestlers are going to be excited. I'm excited about it. There's going to be stuff for sale, and it's just phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, they got some sick shirts that are going to be for sale at the booth there. And according to our man, Tony Hager, it's going to be exclusive right there, buy it there. So show up, fans, because you're gonna want these badass shirts. It's supposed to come in different colors too. We'll see what Rudis does for us. We're really excited about them being a partner of this event. We also want to plug in here the Conflict at Carver tournament. If you're a high school kid looking for a preseason tournament, this is a perfect opportunity. Or you're a parent, and you want your kid to get a couple matches. Sign up for this tournament, and you do weigh-ins, and then you can turn around. If you're wrestling in the event, you get it free entry into the Night of Conflict event. Get to watch the duel for free, so get some preseason matches. Get to watch 13 really great matches at the Night of Conflict. Win-win. Sign up, wrestle, watch Night of Conflict. Everybody wins. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, and maybe some of these kids wanted into the duel, didn't get asked. Some of these kids are going to wrestle in the tournament the next day as well. So if you want your shot at some of these big names, some of these ranked kids, get in the tournament. Try to get your shot. If they're in there, it'll be your opportunity to wrestle them as well. So just because you're not in the duel doesn't mean you can't see some really great national kids as well.
And hey, let's also bring up, last year we knew who Drew Bennett, we knew who Tristan Lara was, but when Lara goes out and beats Drew West at the Conflict at Carver, and we saw Drew Bennett, being his funky self, it opened our eyes. It's a preseason tournament that we're guaranteed to be at, so why not just do yourself a favor if you want to be in the Night of Conflict event? That's a good way to get eyes on you. I'm not saying that's the only way you get into the event, but we're going to be there, and that's really a way our eyes were open to Lara for sure. I mean, he got those huge wins, and you want to make a name for yourself, you got to show up to these tournaments. So great opportunity. That's all I got. Lars, you got anything else?
No, not too much else. Just keep your eyes on the site. We're going to have a lot more information about Night of Conflict, different things coming up. And then also I do expect there to be some recruiting news in the next few weeks. So we'll try to get that to you as soon as we can. We're trying to do our diligence there and keep up with these recruits and all these schools. So I have more news on that front here coming quick too.
Absolutely. So for Ross Bartachek and Lars Underbaki, thank you for tuning in to episode 65 of Potentially Dangerous. We'll be back with you guys next week. Take care.